Drive 1, just gently going to slide right in place. There we go. Now it's time for drive 2, same thing. Hey everyone, Digital David here. Today in this video, I'm going to be checking out the QNAP TS-25 3D 2-Bay NAS. I did purchase this product myself, and any opinion expressed in this video is strictly my own. That being said, if you're interested in this product, you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. You can see the retail box in packaging right here, walking us through some of the key tech specs and details. So we have an Intel CPU inside. It's quad core, 2.7 gigahertz. We have 4 gigs of RAM. It looks like we could expand it up to 8 gigs. This can house 2 2.5-inch drives or 2 3.5-inch drives. We're going to be using 2 of the Toshiba X300 10 terabyte drives. Then we have some additional tech specs. So we have one PCIe Gen 2 X4 for 10 gig or SSD. So you can see we're going to go ahead, we're going to add that 10 gig card now while we're getting everything set up to have some future proofing. And then you can see this one comes equipped with 2 2.5 gig ports. Now let's go ahead, let's open it up and look at the contents. Here are all the contents. First up, you can see we have our product literature with our warranty information, and we have our quick install guide in multiple languages walking us through everything we need to know to get everything set up and installed properly. So check that out right there. And then you can see we have some software information as well and a link to the download center. Then you can see we have 2, I believe they're Cat 5e patch cables. We have a bag of screws for our hard drives. And then you can see we have our power cable and power supply right here. And last but not least, we have our NAS itself. Let's go ahead, let's look at that in more detail. Here's a look at the unit up close. Check it out, everything looks great. We got the QNAP logo and branding with the glossy cover. We got a 2-tone finish on the front. A couple different buttons and a USB port. Now we can look at it from the side. We have a sticker for the service portal. We can look at it from the top. You can see we have our product tech specs right here. So check that out. You can see everything that we have, and we do have an Intel CPU. Here it is from the other side. You can see, looks like we got some ventilation right here, and then we have our unlock and lock button. You can see it from the back side. PCIe expansion slot. We have our exhaust fan, HDMI, 2 2.5 gig ports, 4 USB ports, Kensington security lock, and our power plug. And now you can see it from the bottom right here. Check it out. We have more product information. So you can see how everything looks from the bottom and the 4 feet that we have. Also, if you want to go ahead and get access to the 2 drive trays, just make sure you have that in the unlock position like we do. And you have these little textured dots here. Just gently slide it off to the side. And here we go. We can go ahead and pull these trays out. So both trays are identical to each other. So check it out. Everything looks great. Now let's go ahead and get it set up. So the first thing we're going to get installed is our 10 gig card. We did purchase one from QNAP. I thought it made sense to stick with the same manufacturer. So hopefully everything's just truly plug and play. You can see we have our case panel removed as well. That was just 2 screws on the back, one at the top and one at the bottom, and then it slides right out. We also went ahead, we removed our bracket there. That was actually the most difficult screw to remove. And now you can see our PCIe slot where we're going to go ahead and install our 10 gig adapter. So this comes with all the different faceplates you would need depending on where you're going to use this. But then we just gently line it up and press it in place. Now we can come back here and you can see we'll take this screw and fasten it in place. All right, screws in. Now it's time to go ahead and put the cover back on. All right, so now you can see cover's back on, screws are in place. Now it's time to get our hard drives installed. So the drives we're using today are the Toshiba Performance X300 10 terabyte drives. So I already had one of these drives in my computer for the last 2 years running without any issues, using it as a video archive. So I thought I'd go ahead, repurpose that, bought another one. And now we'll use both of these drives in our build. So let's go ahead, let's get them installed on the tray. So you can see we got both drives installed right here. So first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and snap it in place to the tray. And then on the back side, you can see we have 3 screws for our drive that we needed to insert and fasten in place. But there we go, both of them are all set up and ready to go. So it's time to drop them into our NAS. So here we go, drive 1, just gently gonna slide right in place. There we go. Now it's time for drive 2. Same thing, just very gently slide it in place. There we go. We have both drives successfully installed. Now let's go ahead, let's plug this in, power it on, and try it out. So everything's been plugged in, powered on, and we had a prompt to update the firmware. Firmware has been updated, and now this is the screen we're at where we're taken to the QTS Smart Installation System. So let's go ahead, let's start that right here. You can see firmware version, so check for update, but we do have the latest available already. We have updated the firmware. So let's select next. Now you can see we can enter the name right here. So go ahead, enter the name you want, username, password, confirm your password, then select next. Next up, we're prompted to select the date and time. So select next. We can choose our IP address automatically or use a static IP address, up to you. So we're gonna select next. Now you can see we have a summary of our information right here. And now we're ready to hit apply. Here we go. It's going to clear all drive data. Do you want to proceed? Yes, we do. And now you can see it's applying the settings, and the process could take a couple of minutes. Currently, we're at 1%. I can hear a little bit of noise from our unit. A couple of the drives are making some noise, as I believe they're probably being erased. And now you can see it's going really quick. 99%. Almost done. All right, now it's at 100%, and you can see the service is starting. It took longer to go from 99% to 100%, then 0% to 99%, and now we still wait. So it took a little bit less than 10 minutes for everything to get fully set up. Then we had a congratulations screen where we click the next button at the bottom. That now takes us into our NAS right here. And you can see we have our prompt welcoming us to storage and snapshots, where we need to set up a storage pool and then a thick or thin volume, or create a static volume. So they walk you through some of those options right here. So let's go ahead, let's select next, and we can see how we want to configure our storage pool. So let's go ahead, let's select next again, and they're showing us some helpful tips and tricks if we want to use File Station. And then run backup data to another NAS using snapshots. So we can do that. So we could select finish or new storage pool. So at the screen, if we want to enable Q tier, we can. So it's an auto tiering storage. This would allow you to add different types of drives. In our case, we don't have different types of drives. So let's go ahead, let's select next. So next up, you can see we can select our disks right here. So we could create a said storage pool. And we have some more information right here if we wanted to do that. So self-encrypting drive. We're not going to do that. We're just going to select our 2 disks right here, and we're going to choose our RAID type. So we have JBOD, you can see, for 2 or more disks. It allows the capacity to be used, but does not provide any disk failure protection or performance benefits. So basically, that would just be using this as 20 terabytes of external storage. Then we have RAID 0, very similar, but it's going to give us the highest read and write performance. But again, there's no failure protection. And then you can see we have RAID 1. So again, for 2 disks, it protects against 1 disk failure. So this should be used when only 2 disks are available. So we'll have some redundancy built in place, but we have no additional options because we don't have enough disks. So let's go ahead, let's do RAID 1. And then you can see a hot spare disk, which we don't have. So this would be a free disk can be assigned to a RAID group as a hot spare disk for extra protection, but we don't have that capability right here with our drives, with our configuration. So select next. And now you can see we have some additional settings we need to configure depending on what we prefer. So for my setup, you can see currently I'm going to do a 90% alert threshold. We don't even have to have that enabled. And for our pool guaranteed snapshot space, I'm going to be doing 5% just to have the minimum amount reserved for those snapshots. I'm not the expert and I may end up reconfiguring that later, but that's what I'm going to start with. So now I'm going to select next. And now you can see we have our summary right here. So we're doing a new RAID group for 2 disks hosted in RAID 1. And then we have some additional information right here. So our estimated reserve space out of our 9 terabytes of usable space is 625 gigabytes, leaving us around 8.5 terabytes of unallocated and usable space. So let's go ahead and let's create it. Here we go. Select OK, and now it's going to work on setting everything up for us. Now you can see we've successfully created our storage pool right here. Now the next step, which will be prompted through the wizard, is to create a new volume. If for some reason you don't have the wizard pulled up, that's not a big deal. You can just go right up here, select create, and you can choose all different options that we have. So we're going to choose new volume. Here we go. We have multiple types we can choose from. Thick volume is the default option. There's also a thin volume and a static volume. I am not the expert with this QNAP NAS and the accompanying software. So initially I was going to set mine up as a static volume, but if you select static volume and proceed, there are no drives to select and you're unable to set it up. So I'm not sure if that has to be set up outside of a storage pool. Again, to be determined, but I'd like to have access to those fastest speeds. I'd like to see what this is capable of, but for my needs, I would appreciate having snapshots, even if that means that our drive isn't running as fast as possible. That might be the biggest issue for me, just using 7200 RPM drives, but if you're using SSDs, NVMEs, whatever your system has, maybe the same one or not, you might not really see much of a difference between any of these, but I feel like for us, it'd be best if we could do static volume with what I'm doing, but I also do want the snapshot. So I'm going to be using thick volume for now to set it up and see how I like it. So we select OK. Now you can see here's our location, the storage pool right here. We have 8.48 terabytes available. Now you can see the capacity by default, but let's go ahead, let's set it to the maximum right here. And let's title this Vault. So there you go. You can see everything else should be fine as it is. If you want an alert threshold, you can turn that on or off. Encryption. So we can also change our snapshot settings later on in the snapshot manager if we want. So we'll just leave that as it is. We'll select next. You can see our summary right here. Now let's go ahead and select finish. And you can see that it's loading everything for us. Our volume is being created right now. Then we can select close. So there we go. It's initializing our volume. And then you can see our current status is ready and it's synchronizing. So up here you can see how far along we are. And it's currently showing 27 hours left. But that I think just went up because of this. So I don't think that's the most accurate. I don't think it's going to take that long. But you can see the background task right there and what's going on. But check that out. Now we have everything being set up. So now let's go ahead. Let's just click through a couple more of these settings. We're not going to dive into the specifics of each one, but I want to show you what you're able to control and tweak. So first up, you can see our system overview right here. Check it out. This will get more complex depending on what you have connected and configured. You can see our volume information right here, our storage pool settings. Then we have some additional settings right here you can check out for our storage, our disk and devices, and our snapshot settings, all of our global settings right there. Then we have a help section, and then you can see we have our little walkthrough tool, wizard, whatever you want to call it right there. And then we have our external devices, so you can see how to manage those and learn more about them right there. Next up, we have our storage option, so you can see our current disks. So we can select the disks, and it's nice that they show you which disk is which. We can view more disk information right here, like our health. Then you can see our RAID groups. We have different actions. Next up, you can see our storage and snapshots. We've already spent some time here. So you can see we can create new options, our snapshot settings. We can manage everything that's going to load for us. So you can see that. Next up, our cache acceleration. So if we had SSD cache drives, we could add those right here depending on the system you're using. Next up, if we had external storage connected, it would detect those devices right there. Remote disks as well. You could add a virtual disk. Here's our snapshot settings right here. So you can see what we have going on. Our replicas. And then you can see we have our vault. And we can manage and change everything as needed right here for our snapshot settings. And then lastly, we have a couple more options depending on what you want. This is going to open up new tabs. You may have to enable these services. So we'll just click on a couple of them right here. So you can see that loading. If we wanted to install that, we can easily find that. A couple more tools too from the App Center, so you could install that. Just some options for you. Some of your quick settings. Now let's go ahead, let's look at some additional options we have built into the software. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see our main menu. Then up at the top right-hand corner, you can see we have a lot of different options here, from search to our background tasks. Then you can see external devices, notifications. We have our options right here for our account. We have a more section. Then we have our notice board. And then we have our dashboard. So this is great. We can see our system health, our hardware info, our resource monitor. Very convenient. Then you can see we have our control panel. We have so many different system settings you can get to right here. We'll even select the more option. You can see everything we're working with within the control panel. Our privileges, different users, user groups, shared folders, network and file services right here, and applications. Pretty impressive stuff. Then we have File Station. So you can see we have our current volume that needs to finish setting up, which it's doing in the background. But you can see we can manage everything right here if we want. Then we already looked at storage and snapshots and all of those different features and settings. Then you can see next up we have our App Center right here. So check it out. We can view our apps, all the apps. So they have a lot of different apps here. Massive variety. Then you can browse by different categories. Let's say backup and sync. You can see what they got working there. Help Center, if you have any questions, need any manuals or resources, or help desk. We have our HDMI display applications. So it looks like we could turn this into a home theater media player if we wanted to. So we have that option. Again, we have that HDMI out port. Virtualization guide right here, so check that out. You can choose which route you want to go. And then we have this channel we looked at earlier too, so you can see if we want to set that up. You have the ability right here for that to load. Let's go ahead and exit out. And then you can see we have different screens with nothing on them at the moment. And then down here at the bottom, you can see we can leave feedback, our utility. We can also go to the My QNAP Cloud website if we want to set up cloud. Then you can see we have our trash can down here. So currently it's just going to take us right there to File Station 5, which we have nothing in yet. Now let's go over some of the cloud settings. So cloud setup, simple and straightforward. First thing you got to do, go ahead, download the My QNAP Cloud app from the App Center. Once you do, it'll prompt you to sign in and create an account. Then it'll walk you through all the different settings that we have right here, and it'll auto configure them for you, which is great. So just check a couple of boxes and you're all set and ready to go. Then you can see you can choose your access controls right here. So we have 3 different options. Public, which basically means anyone can find your device and remotely access the published services on it. We have private, where only you, the admin, can access it. Or we have customized, where you can add phone numbers and email addresses to get people to have access to your NAS. It's that simple. Once they do, you can see they even walk you through the features on their website right here, what it looks like to create an account. You can see confirm your registration, and then you can see how you're going to remotely access it from your computer or device. And then all the shared folders that you can view directly from the My QNAP Cloud website. So pretty simple and straightforward. They show you how to share files with your friends, with nice screen grabs and everything else that you need. I also want to point out they have multiple mobile apps as well you can use depending on what you're after and how you want it displayed, especially if you're on a phone or tablet. You'll appreciate having that. And then lastly, you can see right here, I'm actually signed into it via the cloud as well. So it looks identical to accessing it from our web browser on our local network. Now let's go ahead, let's look at it from our phone on a different network. So now you can see I'm on my phone right here. Pay attention up at the top. We have our 5G service and signal. So this is what it's going to look like if you want to use the desktop view. That's what I'm using on my mobile device. Again, we have multiple apps we're prompted to download if you want to do it differently. No big deal. So right here, I just want to show you that we did copy some files over. So you can see we can view them right here. It's this laptop project. So check that out. There we go. Everything is working great. We can see everything here live in real time, not connected to our local network. We're just on Google Fi 5G, so we can truly access our files from anywhere. So now let's talk about real world file transfer speeds. So again, that's going to vary depending on the drives you're using and the volume type, right? Again, thick, thin, or static volume. And with the drives, are you using a 5400 RPM disk drive, 7200, something even higher? Maybe you're using SSD. And you can't forget about your network as well too. So in this case, we have our 10 gig adapter, but spoiler alert, that does not help us in this case due to how slow the disk drive and the NAS is running. There is no difference for us on our 10 gig network, whether we're using the 10 gig adapter or the included 2.5 gig port. So with that being said, 10 gig is more future-proof for when we swap out and upgrade the drive. So just keep that in mind. For most people, the 2.5 gig Ethernet port is probably not going to be your bottleneck. For us, we're averaging around 60 megabytes a second, I would say, for our real-world file transfer speeds. Now, this particular drive should get around 150-ish for the read and write, so 150 megabytes per second. So you can see we're not getting those benchmarking results right here, but again, depends on the volume type, and we're running snapshots and all of those other things. So there's a lot of variables there that I don't even understand them all, but in this case, you can see if you're going to mimic and replicate the same setup here, this is going to be what you can expect for copying over 4K video files and a lot of data. You can expect around 60 megabytes a second. So overall, this QNAP NAS is a really capable device, whether you're an average consumer or small business like myself, or if you're a network administrator, you could really geek out and tweak this however you see fit. But for me, needing something that's simple, plug and play to set up, very happy with this unit. And again, we have some future proofing here. We could swap out our 3.5 inch drives with different adapters if we wanted to put some 2.5 inch SSDs. I will continue to consider that as the prices drop for the SSD technology, because it's definitely worthwhile to get better speeds than 60 megabytes per second. That's really the biggest downside to me. I'm spoiled here with my 10 gig network in the studio and having over 120 terabytes of storage on an unraid server. So I love the speeds that I get there using cache drives and NVMe drives. So I definitely have missed that with this particular drive, but the cloud capabilities, it's so much easier to set up. It's plug and play. So it's cheaper for me to go this route and actually add this guy into my network. So overall, for my use case, I'm very happy with it. I want to point out too, it's actually ran a little bit quieter than I thought. Obviously, I wouldn't want to have it on my desktop here while I'm working on my computer, but if you wanted to have it on the floor, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And again, that will just vary depending on the drives that you choose. Obviously, it's going to be really quiet if you have solid state drives. It does a good job too. It's definitely a little bit warm to the touch as it's running and copying a lot of data, but it does a good job, I'd say, with the fan on the back and dissipating the heat. It's going to be good enough, so I don't expect any sort of overheating issues or anything like that. Other than that, maybe continuing to provide more value to the consumer by giving us better CPUs and more RAM right out of the box, maybe even more expansion options as well. But again, what you're paying for with this device is having all of that software access. And for a small business like myself without an IT guy, that is definitely worthwhile.